Hi, this is Cheryl Maher with the Maher Regime. Thank you for viewing the show tonight. Tonight we've got Mike Egan here. He's the producer of this show. Representative Jeff Ogney couldn't be here tonight. He's stuck up at the State House. How you doing, Matt?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good. We got a lot to talk about tonight.
Good.
Yeah.
It would suck if we had nothing to talk about.
I know. So we have a talk show so we can talk, right?
Exactly.
So I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but the House and the Senate have overridden John Lynch's veto for the parental notification. So last week when we talked about parental notification, the governor vetoed the bill, and today, success, it was 266 to 102.
Okay.
So it is now law that there has to be parental consent if your young girl has been is pregnant. You know, and I think that this goes into also if there's molestation or rape going, you know, something. The parents need to know what's going on with their child.
Now, is it consent or is it just notification?
Oh, I'm sorry, parental notification.
Yeah.
Parental notification, yeah. They'll get the letter. Remember we talked about the letter?
Right,
It's like
yeah. The certified letter.
The certified letter stating that, all right, your daughter's pregnant, and then they have a heart attack and die, and 911 has to be called when they get the letter.
Yes.
So, anyway, with this show, I just want to tell the viewers, Fridays at 1, this show will be re-aired, Sunday at 6 p.m., and Monday morning at 8 a.m., and also temporary, it's Tuesday at 2:30.
Okay.
So you can see the show again at those times. If you miss it today, it will be re-aired.
You can get podcasts of the audio, too, if you go to ipmnation.com/Maher Regime.
Yeah, and I post that on my Facebook.
Good,
so,
good.
you know, we can continue to do that. And so how's it going, Mike?
Great.
Good.
Great. Very good.
We're going to talk about a tough subject tonight that's been going on in the state for a while. We're going to talk about guardian ad litems in family court. And, you know, this is, do you know anything about guardian ad litems and what, I don't know if you have children, Matt?
I do not.
So you don't really...
I have not replicated myself, no. Not yet. So, no, this is something I don't know a lot about. This will be a good learning experience for me.
This will be a good learning experience for you because the state of New Hampshire is really having a hard time with family court and the guardian ad litems and judges, and there's all kinds of stuff going on up in Concord, and, you know, judges being called to impeachment and guardian ad litems are being, you know, reported for their misconduct and not following family rules, and it's just a big thing going on. And you know, and I do have a personal stake in this. You know, I've been in family court and I've seen the injustice of what goes on. And you know, and this is my view. I'm just going to tell you my view because this is my show.
There you go.
I believe this is just my belief system, and I know others, you know, don't really understand this, but you know, when two people get married and they claim they love each other and they have babies together, and then there's a divorce, I don't understand the concept of how people can get so evil on each other. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't understand how they can, and you know, for me it's about the kids. The kids become victims, they become pawns, and it's this game going back and forth, and it's very painful.
Yeah.
And you know, I just feel as though that there has to be someone that's going to stand up and say, look, cut the crap. You know, you can keep going into court and doing all this legal stuff, but really what it comes down to is you're wasting time and energy and time away from your children. They need mom and dad to be on, you know, what's going on with that child and take care of it.
It really brings out the worst of the people involved.
It brings out, it's horrible, absolutely horrible. So we're going to talk about the guardian ad litems, and I'm just going to explain what happens when we go into family court. You know, if there's a custody dispute, the judge can say, we're going to appoint a guardian ad litem. Okay. Now, I did some investigation on guardian ad litems, and in the state of New Hampshire, we have 161 certified guardian ad litems up in Concord. 161. My question was to the Catherine. She's very nice today when I talked to her up at the board, and I said, what is their caseload? How many cases does each one of these guardian ad litems have? And she says she can't reveal that. That's confidential, which doesn't make sense to me because it should be public record of at least how many cases these guardian ad litems are doing to be able to put the time into the child. If they're an appointed for the child, they should be able to have that time to sit with the child and determine what is best for that child. And what I have seen is that there's not enough, the time, there's just no time. And then as I was looking at guardian ad litems, about 85% of them are attorneys, which I find, interesting. Mine happened to not be an attorney, and others that I know. And the funny thing was, when I was going through this process through the family court system, I thought to myself many times I thought, is this me? Am I not getting something? Is this just me? And then I found out as I was going through my process of talking to people, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this show, is so people in New Hampshire can understand that if you have been in a situation in the courts, there is a process that you can go through to fight for justice, fight for what's right. And I think a lot of times people just bow out and they're like, oh, can't do anything about it. You know what? There's a lot you can do, especially when there's so many people that have suffered the same way. And so at the beginning I was like, is this just me? I don't know. And then I found out from this person and that person and this person and that person, they had gone through the exact same process, and I just thought, this is devastation for families and for the children that this has to happen. So what I thought I would do is I want to share a couple stories first, because I put it out on Facebook last night. I put it out on Facebook last night that, if you have any stories, I'll keep it confidential. I wouldn't, blow that for anyone. And so I got a story here. I've got a couple. But what I want to do is read this this lady's story. And my heart just aches for her that this happened. All right. Let me go back here, all the way up. Hi, Cheryl. I was divorced a little over 10 years now. My children were 12 months and almost 6 years old at the time. I was very scared to get a divorce because my now ex-husband was and still is very abusive. He still to this day will comment about my weight, saying things like, looks like you haven't been going to the gym, get your fat out of the house, or just terrible words, you're a prostitute. And I think that the courts also, physical abuse is one thing, but emotional and psychological abuse is another. And when somebody's been being told this for years, I know a lot of women that are told that they're crazy, delusional, not in reality, unstable. If you're being told that for 10 or 11 years, do you really think you're going to believe it after a while? Absolutely. You're going to believe that you are. And I think that goes to how we treat children. If you're telling a child that they're, I don't want to swear or anything like that, but they're bad, or they're going to believe they're bad.
Absolutely.
After so much time, they will believe that, and because that's the family unit. If the family unit is you're this, you're this, you're this, well, what do you think you're going to come out of that marriage with?
And then they will ultimately treat their children the same way.
Ultimately, that's what happens. I don't know, do you know of anybody that's gone through this, Mike? Or
No, not what you're saying. Not a divorce situation. I have a personal positive story because we adopted a couple of boys. They were brothers.
Oh, nice.
And the courts appointed guardian ad litems for them because they had no parental authority at the time.
Oh, right.
So when we went through the adoption, so it was a positive thing, but it was just they just stood in for the boys when we went through the adoption process.
Nice. Now this is Representative Olney on the phone, so let's just answer this. Hi, welcome to the Maher Regime. Did I get that right?
Yes, good afternoon. This is Representative Jeff Oligny. How are you?
Hey, how you doing? I'm sorry you couldn't make it down here tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good. Congratulations on the bill being passed today on parental notification. That's awesome.
Yes, well, thanks. There's a lot of work happening in Concord.
Yeah, good. All right, so we are talking about guardian ad litems, and you and I spoke earlier today. So I talked to Catherine at the office, and I'm going to ask you a question. There's 161 guardian ad litems certified in the state of New Hampshire. Can you tell me what their workload is? Do you have any idea?
Oh, geez, I wouldn't be able to tell you that. That's, as you know, Cheryl, I'm a member of the Guardian ad litem board.
Yes.
I'm the House of Representatives appointee, and the board does not monitor their workload. So
that's incredible.
How is that possible, though, Jeff? I'm confused as to how. they're being overworked, do you know what I'm saying? How can they spend the amount of time that they need to get the proper paperwork in order and the interviewing and all of those things that needed for these children?
Right. Well, I think the state relies on the guardian to manage their business properly and certainly do their job. In accordance with the New Hampshire statute, the guardian ad litem board is tasked with basically approving training for the guardian ad litems.
Okay, we're going to get into that.
Certifying the guardian, actually running the training, because they do a certification program. There's a number of courses that guardians have to take.
Yep.
And therefore certifying them once they've met those requirements. And then hearing complaints and, if necessary, sanctioning guardians based on the results of complaint investigations. And that's it. The board doesn't do anything more than is required by statute. So, to your question, how do you know if a guardian is overworked and maybe not doing the best of jobs? Well, what would happen is if the guardian is overworked and not doing a good job, presumably the guardian would break some rules and somebody would complain and file a complaint, and then we would look into that.
Well, the interesting thing is when I talked to Catherine today, she sent me the statistics on the complaints, and I found this to be very interesting that there was, let me just pull out this paperwork if you don't mind. Complaint statistics. As of February 2001, a total of 69 inquiries have been received and logged by the GAL board since January 1st, 2008, when the board was first able to accept complaints. Now, they weren't able to accept complaints before them, Jeff? Before 2008?
That's correct.
Why?
Guardian ad litem have been in effect for a long time here in New Hampshire, and a little bit of the history as I understand it. Guardian ad litems were a creation of the court. The court created them in order to really help the judges investigate cases. I think it was probably driven by the judicial workload, and with the best of intentions, the judges wanted to get a thorough, objective investigation and a recommendation on a custody decision. And that's why they developed guardian ad litems. The problem is, and probably still is that the judiciary is pretty overworked. They've got a big docket. There's delays getting into court. They're facing budget cuts. I'm sure it's a challenging environment to work in. You mentioned, being overworked and not performing well. Well, you might be able to build a good case there that that's been happening in the judiciary for some time.
Well, this is.
However, what was happening is the court, having created guardians, was responsible for disciplining guardians, and there really was no place to lodge a complaint. All you could do was really write a letter to the administrative judge of the court and say, I have a problem with my guardian, and here's what the issues are. And the court didn't do a real good job at answering those complaints and disciplining the guardians. And they turned to the legislature and they said, we'd like you to implement law establishing a guardian ad litem board to manage the guardian ad litem system, and that's what happened.
Well,
so now it's a statutory board. The board is created by statute.
Okay.
And it's an executive board where members are basically working for the executive branch in executing to the statute.
Well, this is a question I have about. I looked through the list of GALs. 85% of them are lawyers, which is,
right.
I don't know if that's good or bad, and the rest of them are not. And then I looked over what they have to do to be certified, and their training, and I was absolutely shocked at the amount of hours that they are trained, and it's not very many. It's about
Really?
20. Let me read this. First of all, to be certified, you've got to give them all kinds of information about yourself.
I was going to say, I'm curious what the criteria is to even be considered.
I can go over that,
Yeah.
but I want to ask Jeff about the number of hours that they're trained. Let me just get to that page. There's a lot of, there's a big process here that they have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, while you're looking, Cheryl, I can give you a little background. There
Okay.
is a significant process to go through in order to be certified as a guardian ad litem. And it has to do with levels of education,
Yes.
a certain amount of professional or volunteer service,
Yes.
a criminal records check. It's a very lengthy process.
I understand. I understand that.
certified.
I understand that. That they have to be obviously have degrees and those kinds of certifications and volunteer work with children or adults that may be incapacitated. But the interesting thing I found was there's This consists of at least 4 hours of observation or participation in a court case or in court cases involving a child or children or an incapacitated adult. 4 hours. Obviously they're going to get more hours as they're working as guardian ad litems, but 4 hours. And then it says here, Jeff, it says a general overview of the statutes. A general overview. This is something that I'm shocked with as well. A general overview. Everything in here is a general overview of what abuse and neglect is. A general overview. And if not having an attorney as your guardian ad litem, they may not really comprehend what the real statute may be for abuse and neglect.
The 4 hours makes it sound like it's kind of an on-the-job training situation.
Well, and then there's also here 8 hours on issues relating to matters traditionally handled by guardian ad litems in superior court. So they go through different levels. Is that right? If they can be they can be certified in the judicial court, and then they can be certified in superior court. Is that right, Jeff?
At last I checked, Cheryl, there are 3 different courts that you can be trained in. One is the district court, and one is the family division, family and superior, and I think the other is the probate court.
Oh, the probate court, right. I'm sorry, I meant that as well, yeah. And I think that has to do with the adults that may have diminished capacity, is that correct?
Yes, incapacitated adults,
Yes,
that's correct.
Yes.
So the majority of the work is obviously done in family court, and I think the intent of the training anyway, and I'm not saying that the training is adequate or not, but I'm saying the intent of the training is to give somebody a basic understanding of where the statutes are, what they're about, and the guardians are expected at that point to go and research and become familiar with the statutes on their own.
Right, and who says that they are? And I think that's as many stories as I've heard, and I know you understand that, Jeff. You've heard a lot of stories that I'm wondering, because they're so overworked and the training is not, in my opinion, accurate. We're talking about children, and we know how the schools are now. We've got children with special needs. We have children with just ADD issues. We've got children with behavior issues. How can a guardian ad litem go into a home for 1 hour, and that's how long they're in a home for, and every person I have talked to, 1 hour, and make a decision when they are not certified in the area of the disability or in mental illness or any of this? How can they make that kind of decision for these children? And that's where I get really perplexed. And then they give the recommendations to a judge. The judge, as far as what I'm seeing or what I've seen and heard, aren't actually even reading the whole report. They're reading just the recommendations and saying, yep, whatever the guardian ad litem says. I don't know one case that a judge has ever overruled a guardian ad litem. Not one.
Well, you've raised a couple of issues, Cheryl, so let me try to respond.
Okay.
I have heard of cases where the guardian's recommendation was not taken by the judge.
Oh.
It's not often in my experience, but it has happened. I think that the goal of the guardian is to, as I said earlier, to help the court conduct a more thorough investigation. Now, if you're tasked with doing such an investigation and you're not familiar or competent in a particular area that you need to be, a subject matter expert in, it's expected that you will then say to the court, I suggest that the parents enter into counseling, or I suggest that we bring a social worker into the case to assess the person, the incapacitated adult. Make a recommendation to the court on what you need in order to conduct a thorough investigation. And if you're not capable of doing it on your own, then what do we need to do in order to get that done? the amount of time that a guardian spends with, parents, for example, is a very large variable. I've heard guardians not interview one parent.
Yep,
And then
I've heard
I've also
that.
guardians parents for an hour each or weeks at a time. There's a very large variation in how much time a guardian will spend before they make a recommendation.
Right. And I think that's where it's such a personal and intimate issue for each family, that you've got this court-appointed person coming into your home for maybe an hour, and then maybe meeting with you for an hour, and they're making these recommendations. And the other thing that I take issue with is, why is it that whenever a guardian ad litem is around, or they're doing their investigation, that they have to pull up every part of your past and put it into a report? Why is that so important? When your past is part of why you're getting out of a marriage, does that make sense? You're trying to move on with your life and move forward and do better, and the past is dredged up, and then you're in court arguing and over stuff that really is it really significant to have all of those past issues in a confidential report that really don't relate to the children? I mean, what happened to a woman as a teenager, or a man as a teenager, or in his 20s? Why is that important? Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. Well, so you bring up a good question, and again, it's a guardian has broad discretion on what they will investigate, what they will look into and ask about, and what they'll report on. And I'm sure there's instances both ways where someone's past is no longer relevant, or it is still relevant. I think it would be up to the individual, if they're pro se, or preferably if they had an attorney representing them, it would be up to the attorney to say, this section of the guardian ad litem report is irrelevant. They should object to that on a legal basis, that it is of no consequence, and it was only in the report, for example, to reduce the credibility of a particular person. If you can't show that a topic was relevant, that really does go to the credibility, I guess, of the guardian ad litem for potentially bringing up things that don't matter.
And I find that with every person I've met, and a lot of the same issues that I'm talking about here, because I know you've heard a lot of the same stories, but that becomes something that because you're bringing up past stuff, it causes a ruckus in court, and then the guardian ad litem is hated, and it's usually now the guardian ad litem is one-sided because he's attacking one person on their past, when really the past is over. We're trying to move on and do what's right for these children, and that's the difficult part for, I believe, families, is just to be brought through the mud and the craziness of, why are we talking about this over and over and over again? There's no need to talk about it anymore. And but it's very frustrating, I think, for families to have to continue to go through that. So,
well, of course it is. I'm sure it's frustrating for both sides.
And
I think it all boils down to chaos, and the degree of chaos that is raised in a family matter, particularly a custody dispute. The goal of the guardian, and this is probably some revision of rules that might ensue, going forward, is I think we probably want to make a real clear statement, if we're not doing so already, that one of the goals of the guardian is to reduce conflict and to reduce chaos. This is really, I've covered or I've talked to a lot of people that are happily divorced and unhappily divorced, and some have gone through the ringer, and some have become better friends than they were when they were married, and they did it for all of $500, and then I've heard people spend over $1 million.
Oh, sure.
yeah.
So there's a variety of a real gamut here, but the bottom line is what we all ought to be focused on is reducing conflict, such that the parents can learn to co-parent their children, and really that's it. The less conflict there is, the better. Kids do better in an environment where they have two healthy parents, and putting parents at odds with each other is not conducive to creating or sustaining two healthy parents.
Right.
So we create some unhealthy parents throughout this process.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
might be an all well-intentioned process.
And
but we do create
absolutely.
some unhealthy relationships.
I want to talk to you about what we talked about today on the phone was this Tom. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, and I didn't hear about it.
Tom Ball.
Tom Ball. I read this. Tom Ball apparently was just taken through the mud, and he went up to the. You want to tell the story, Jeff?
Well, I haven't. I'm not an expert at the story, but it's a very sad story, a real tragedy. This gentleman, Thomas Ball, over in the Keene area, self-immolated himself, poured gasoline on himself, and lit himself on fire and killed himself on the steps of the courthouse. And he wrote a 15-page, letter to the press before he did this. I've read bits and pieces of it. I've had some people summarize it for me. And the bottom line is he got caught up in the system where, he made a mistake and disciplined I think it was his young daughter, by smacking her in an act that he regretted as soon as he did.
But it was years before the divorce took place, wasn't it?
I'm not sure of the time frame,
Okay,
but it was some time previously. But the way the story was explained to me, he had a disagreement after this incident with his spouse. She asked him to get out of the house and cool off. He did. As soon as he left, I guess she called the police, and then once the police were called, they intervened and they explained that he couldn't return, and that there'd be a restraining order issued right away, and if she let him back in, that she herself could be incarcerated. And,
right.
And that just started the confusion and the chaos.
Yeah, it
I can
started.
only imagine
Yeah.
that it
I'm sorry.
ensued from there probably over years.
That was in April of 2001, apparently.
Oh.
And yeah, so that's 11 years
Yeah.
or 10 years ago. And what I read when I read this whole thing, which I won't, I'll just summarize it as well. That basically the system just caught up with this man. He was put into jail at one point. He was put in. He was told he had to go to counseling. And because the counselor could make a recommendation for the court, which is not, I don't think, legal for a counselor to make a recommendation.
You mean a custody recommendation?
A custody recommendation, correct. So I think that he just got caught up in this system of government and just being stuck and being in insanity. And God bless him and his kids. It's a very sad story that this would happen, and that I feel so bad for the children, and I think about his wife, and I think, what could have stopped this situation? What could have stopped this before it got to the point where, could she have stopped something? Could she have just said, hey, you know what, let's end this, let's just talk, let's get we need to just work together for the children. I mean, this is 10 years, 2001 to now?
Right.
I mean, come on!
Right, well...
I mean, how much anger does a person have?
My understanding is that he was investigated by the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and acquitted. He was not found to be abusive or neglectful. It was a random act. It was unfortunate, but he was not an abuser, and he was not neglectful. So, given that, without a finding, I would say that he ought to have access to his children then at this point. But I don't think that ever happened.
No, he didn't. He didn't have access. And he pled not guilty.
The court required him to go to a counselor to get a custody recommendation, and he refused. He said, "I don't, that's not reasonable. I don't need a counselor to investigate me on whether or not I ought to be able to parent my child. I've already been acquitted." And he didn't do that. And then I think, things just got worse. Eventually, he lost his job and fell behind on his child support. And at last I knew, the hearing, he was scheduled for a hearing in that courthouse shortly before his demise, and he was going back for child support, and he expected he'd be likely put in jail for inability to pay child support, even though he didn't have a job for the last couple of years. So,
felt trapped.
So there are some decisions that are being made, in the courtroom that most people aren't aware of, because for many, many years, if not forever, since we've talked about family law, you'll always hear people say, I don't want to hear any particulars of the case. I don't want to hear any specifics of individual cases. But that's exactly what you need to hear.
You have to.
You need to, you need to hear some down to the deepest level possible specifics of some cases on occasion in order to understand how the system is working. And if we're not hearing that, then we, the public, are not cognizant of how the system is performing.
Well, this is one of the reasons why, we started this show, because I believe that if people really, to have this woman write me her story, what happened with the GAL with her, and how devastating it was, to have people reach out and stand up and say, you know what, I've had enough, and what are you guys going to do up in Concord to change things so I don't ever have to go through that again, or my children don't have to go through that again. To be caught up in the system is a horrible, horrible situation. And people, we have the ability as the people to voice what has happened to us with injustice. And that's why...
Well, you're so right. So that's a great question, Cheryl. Let me answer that
Okay,
question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I keep talking.
I've got three good answers, I think, for you.
Okay.
What are we going to do? So here's what we up in Concord are going to do.
Okay.
You may know today we just passed we made history today by passing a budget.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
100% reduced from the last biennium, and that never happens. There was discussion on the floor of the House today that it was commonplace to know that budgets always increase every year. They just do. Mm-hmm. Well, in this case, we reduced it, probably not enough, but we did reduce it 11%.
Okay, good.
And so that was a monumentous feat for the Republican majority, which was really pushing that budget. But it was a great negotiation between the Senate and the House, and hopefully the governor signs it, and we'll be done with the budget for now. But that type of thing is just what we're going to do for family law. We have a redress of grievance committee for the first time ever. It's a constitutional committee. Your Republican majority put this committee in place. Our Speaker, Bill O'Brien. This committee is getting very, very busy.
Who's sitting on that committee? Do you know their names off? Who is sitting on that committee?
Representative Paul Ingertson is the chair of the committee.
Yep, I've talked to him.
And you can find the members. Just look them up. It's a standing committee. Just look them up on the House webpage.
Okay.
And that committee is getting very, very busy hearing grievances or petitions of grievance to have from citizens to have their grievances redressed.
Perfect.
And a lot of the issues brought forward are judicial decisions, guardian ad litem decisions, family law decisions. It's obvious that there's a problem, and this committee is going to look at the facts. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see some people held accountable for abusing discretion if that's the case.
Perfect.
That's one thing we're going to do. The second thing we're going to do is the House Bill 614 was actually killed by the Senate, although the contents of this bill are going to go forward, and that is to perform an audit of the guardian ad litem board and guardian ad litem system. Mm-hmm. I spoke to some people on the joint audit committee, oversight committee. It's a joint between the House and the Senate, and those people took this very seriously. The Senate and the representatives are hearing complaints from their constituents. They're listening, and they're going to do something about it. They're asking for a very thorough audit to be done of the guardian ad litem system. So I expect we'll uncover some inadequacies there, and we'll take some corrective actions based on that as well.
My question on the audit, though, because I did get that letter from Catherine today from the administrative judge, Edwin Kelly. I have the letters that you guys have up there in regards to the budget being cut and that this audit's happening. What exactly, they're not going to investigate the guardian ad litems themselves, they're going to investigate the system and how it works. Is that correct? Is that the scope they're going to go under?
They're going to investigate the board and how the board is doing its duties in accordance with the statute.
Okay. So okay. I just want to rephrase this so I understand. So they're going to go in and look over the guardian ad litem, not the complaint statistics, but how they're trained and exactly what's going on up there with regards to the statutes. So the guardian ad litems themselves will not be audited. That's correct?
That's right. The guardians will not be audited,
Okay.
but some of their work might be audited.
Okay.
Some of their reports might be audited.
Okay.
Certainly some complaints that have come in and been dismissed or been accepted will be audited. There's the exact scope of the audit is yet undefined.
Okay. When do you think that will be
But
defined?
the audit team has got some discretion as to what exactly they're going to audit, but it's a performance audit, and these folks are very, very expert at doing these audits. They look at the statute, they understand what's required, and then they look for evidence that they're performing in accordance with what the statute's intent was.
Okay. Okay, that
One
makes,
of the things
that's a
has
good
always
thing,
been-
because that means we're making progress slowly.
Yeah, there's some accountability for the first time, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this has been going on for such a long time that people are just had enough, and the representatives are now listening to the constituents saying, you know, we've got to do something about this, because families are, you know, we wonder why the children are messed up, and I believe that it's because divorce, number one, is hard enough on children, but when we're wrapped up in the system and there's so much anger between two parties, and then a guardian ad litem, and then a judge, you know, the children are going to feel that, and that's not right. That's just my humble opinion.
All the children want is the children want peace between their parents, whether they live together or not.
Absolutely.
And they want to be able to have some flexibility in their schedule. As the children become over 10 or 12 years old, they want to be able to go see mom or go see dad and have some ability to have some say into where they go.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. So Paul Engel, I can't remember his last name, but I have spoken with him before. He's the chairman of this new committee that's been formed, and they're working
That's right.
very quickly at this. And this is House Bill 614. It was killed by the Senate, huh? So that means it hasn't gone through.
Well, what happened was it's more of a procedural thing. The
Okay.
bill actually said to go do an audit and go do this and that.
Okay.
And the way audits are usually done is the request for an audit comes before the Joint Audit Oversight Committee. So the Senate officially killed 614, but they took up the contents of 614, of HB 614, and they brought it into that oversight committee, and they did in fact schedule up the audit. So I can assure you that probably more so now than ever, this issue of law and how we're dealing with families that are divorcing at a rate of about 50%, which is a steady state rate of 10 years ago, for at least the last 10 years.
Yes.
The Senate and the House are more and more aware of the need to change some things.
Yes.
We've got bills that have come forward. Recently, one to have the court adopt rules of evidence. This is a real problem. Unfortunately, this was killed in the Senate, and I'm not sure why yet, but I hope to find out soon. This would have had the court adopt rules of evidence, so no longer would a judge be able to disregard whatever evidence he wanted and accept whatever evidence he wanted. There would be rules, and hearsay evidence would not be allowed. You would actually need proof in order to back up your allegation against the other party in the family court, and it would not be so much of a what's been referred to as a liar's paradise.
And I'm going to tell you that when I'm just going to tell my personal experience, and I would like to read the couple stories that I have here before we go off. But I found that when you're filing a motion with family court, my gosh, that person can say whatever they want, and on a motion, and then you look like such a bad person. I can't even imagine. A judge is looking at this like, oh, this person must be really bad, or or inapt to take care of the children. So I think that is something that needs to obviously be looked into. That when you're filing a motion with the court, you just can't say whatever you want. You have to back it up.
Well, that's the way it is in a criminal court, and
It's in family court. It's in family court, though.
A citizen is better off defending themselves against a rape or murder allegation or charge than they are in family court, because in criminal court you can't just throw out allegations and hope that some of them stick.
Right.
or hope that enough allegations, whether they be true or not, reduce the credibility of your opponent enough that you'll win the case.
Right.
And that's what happens time and time again in family court.
But
Yeah.
are they put under oath in family court as they are in criminal court?
They
Yeah,
are put on,
absolutely.
They are put under oath, but you know, you can't get anybody to prosecute anybody for perjury. It is
Sure.
you know, an act of God to get somebody prosecuted for perjury. Recently, there was a case where, and I don't know the name of the case, but apparently there was a husband and wife, and the husband was in the Navy, and it might have even been the Ruggiero case. This is where, allegedly, to my understanding, the wife was texting herself, threatening messages, claiming that the husband was doing it, and
Really?
Wow.
he was in the Navy, and he got the Navy lawyers involved, and they brought evidence, irrefutable evidence, and the court found in their favor, reversed the decision, and I think the woman is incarcerated.
Good.
Good.
But it's a very uncommon course of events.
But do you think that possibly a prosecutor or, they would look and say, you know what, maybe we need to, go after someone for committing perjury because the evidence is there to prove a point that we're not going to put up with any more liars in court? I don't know, just the thought.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I'm right there with you, Cheryl, and I'm not sure what yet can be done about it. We recently had a decision from the court handed down that said that the House of Representatives does not have the authority to order the Attorney General to take action.
Okay.
And so what that means is, how do you require somebody to prosecute something?
Or the governor, right?
There's such a thing as prosecutorial discretion, and I'm not an attorney, so.
Right.
But apparently, those in the in the police or the Attorney General's office, they don't have to prosecute if they don't feel it's going to be a reasonable thing to prosecute or something that they don't think is going to either serve the public or win. So they have broad discretion on what they prosecute and what they don't.
Well, and I think that if we stand as a state and say, you know what, we're going to stand up for justice, for truth and honesty, then possibly maybe we'll stop the madness that goes on in family court. Just my opinion, I don't know. But it's beyond, I guess, because I have that thought. When I was a girl, Ronald Reagan was my favorite president, and that's how I view the world. We're honest, and we stand up for what's right, and we do the right thing, and that's just how I feel about things. So it's obviously I've had some personal, had experiences with this, so it's not easy for anyone.
Those are good ideals, Cheryl, and I think many of us would agree.
I know. I don't know what happened to the world.
What's going on behind the scenes? You have to understand. My view is rather simple. I say all the time. I say chaos is profitable, and to the degree that we as a society can create chaos, then we can employ a whole bunch of people, and we're in a recession and we've got some economic trouble and we certainly need jobs. We can create jobs. We can create jobs for people that are going to go resolve this chaos that we've created.
Yes.
And unfortunately, those that are being hurt by this chaos is our New Hampshire families and our children.
Yes.
And this is we don't need jobs like that.
No.
We do need jobs, but let's put our smart people together working on something that's the right thing to work on, not create chaos so we can go have jobs to go fix it.
Right. And I agree with you completely, and I'm so grateful that you're up there working, and you sit on the GAL board, and you are doing a great job, Jeff, and I'm very proud to know you, and grateful for you, for the work that you are doing up there.
Well, thanks so much, Cheryl. It's and I'm glad for you also assembling this team and helping bring some of these issues to the public, because there's just a lot of things that go on behind the courtroom doors that the public does not know.
And I think that the people that have had this happen to them with the chaos that we were just talking about, stand up and say something. Call your legislator, call the state office, and start telling your story so these laws can be changed so we don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to ensue the chaos and the hatred that goes on between people. And I'm, I feel very strongly about that, and that's why I'm doing this. So,
Well, this is excellent. I'm so glad you are, and I'm sure we'll talk again. But
yes, we will.
Keep up the good work.
All right, and I'll talk to you soon, Jeff. Thank you so much for calling.
All right, thanks,
Okay,
Cheryl. Good
all right.
night.
Good night, you too. Bye-bye. Okay, I just want to, I want to just do a couple stories, so possibly that if there's anyone viewing the show can go, that happened to me, and maybe I need to sit down and write my brief little story and get this off to my legislator, and so that these issues can really be taken, seriously. It's unbelievable, the stories that I've heard. So I'm just going to read her story real quick, and we have about, looks like 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
No, that was very enlightening.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think once you've seen it, you get caught up in it, and you've had the anger and the chaos and all of those things. You can look back and go, "Oh my gosh, this just wasn't right."
Right.
This just wasn't right.
Absolutely.
and so yeah. Okay. So let me go here and read this. Okay. So he was, obviously verbally abusive to this woman. I'm not seeing any physical stuff, so I won't say that. And when I first got divorced, I can remember laying in bed with the children asleep, wondering if he was going to come in and kill me. I worked full-time and always have. I was able to buy the house that we owned together for full market value out and keep it. I still am very proud of myself for being able to do that. I had primary physical custody of our children. For 10 years, my ex-husband only took the children for 2 days every other week. He never once took them over a school vacation or even a long weekend. This meant that I could never go away for a long weekend. Over the years, I have been very involved in the children's lives. I was my daughter's Girl Scout leader for 5 years. I was a popcorn mom at school for 4 years. And I volunteered in the classrooms for both my son and my daughter for miscellaneous reasons many, many times over the years. 6 years ago, I started a construction company, and I did well.
Wow.
I know, isn't that great?
Yeah.
And I did well the first few years, and then the economy basically put me out of business. Last year, I had to let my employees go and close the business. During this time, I had no sleep. My current marriage was falling apart. I almost lost my home, and I started drinking more than I ever had. I used to only drink once or twice a year a glass of wine at Christmas or whatever. I went from having, oops, sorry about that. Basically, she's just talking about her drinking.
Yeah.
My life was falling apart. I spoke with all of the people that I would put down. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I am really sorry to the viewers here. I just hit the wrong button. Okay. Okay. My ex-husband saw a moment of opportunity when my current husband and I were having a heated discussion about money, and we were yelling, and he smacked me on the butt. My kids were upstairs and called their father, and my ex called the police. The police came and arrested my husband for domestic violence. My ex-husband then filed for a custody modification. We went in front of a judge, and I was very honest and told everything. My ex had a big shot attorney who was only focused, and I put this on my Facebook today. I said, "He who has the most money wins. Agree or disagree?"
Absolutely.
I put that on my Facebook.
In
just
America,
'cause I
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
The judge had said to my ex and his attorney that he didn't want them to focus on that 3-month period, but to look forward. Because I am currently on track working 2 jobs and I very little drinking now. Well, we had to hire a guardian ad litem. The guardian ad litem was picked was Adria M. Grabler. And basically, she only was interested in the 3-month period where my life was falling apart. I spoke with all the people that I put down for references, and they all said that she wasn't interested in what I am doing now or did before, but just kept asking questions regarding that 3 months. Well, how horrible. In the end of her report, she stated that my children would be better off living with their father and his living girlfriend. I was and still am very upset about this. My son, now 16, lives with his dad and only visits me when he wants to go camping or shopping with me. Oh my gosh, I just messed up. I'm so sorry.
Looked like you were close to the end, but
Okay. Basically what happened was she, so now she has, of course, now I think the daughter goes with the husband 1 week, and then they go over to the mom's house once, so it's on 1 week, off 1 week, so it's back and forth.
Yeah.
And I know that the daughter now has to switch schools, because of this thing that happened, which is difficult for the daughter, difficult for the mother because she's been in the school for such a long time. And then what happened, so she's working and she's doing her thing, and she said if 5 other guardian ad litems, if there were 5 other guardian ad litems that looked at this case, there would have been 5 different reports. You know, and I think that's what the whole point is
Right.
You've got this one person who is looking at a 3-month period of a woman's life and saying, they need to go live with their dad.
Yeah.
It boggles my mind that would happen, but it happens all the time. And I'm going to tell you another story of a friend of mine who had a guardian ad litem. Her name's Barbara, and I'm going to find her on here. And Barbara, what's her name? I'm going to find her. This was a divorce situation where there's 2 children involved, and the ex-husband was a very I'm not going to say anything that's going to cause any slander. What I'm going to say is this man liked to frequent himself in nightclubs and wasn't home a lot. And so basically what happened is, we can get this?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get this.
Okay.
Sure, thanks. Hi, this is Cheryl Maher with the Maher Regime.
Hello?
Hello?
This is no time to be shy. This is your big moment.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Anyway,
thank you.
So what happened was this woman got absolutely nothing in the divorce because of the guardian ad litem's report.
Really?
Absolutely nothing. She went into court and fought it, and she had a good attorney, lost everything because of this guardian ad litem. Wouldn't you know, a year later, she has now moved out of the state with her children because her daughter had been hurt by a family member of the husband. And so, you know, the sad part about that is it didn't have to happen. These things didn't have to happen if this guardian ad litem would not have taken sides. The children told her over and over again, I want to be with my mom. But the guardian ad litem didn't listen. He who has the most money wins.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
that is so sad.
Absolutely.
And there's other stories I could tell, but we're almost out of time. But I just find it to be one of those things where if this has happened to you or if you are going through this, there are ways that you can work this and have justice and hopefully peace in your life with the divorce custody situation. And hopefully in the process there can be some sort of reconciliation between the parents, so at least they can have talking, you know. And I think that's the most difficult part is here you are, you got married, you had babies together, and now, you know, there's lawsuits going on and all kinds of stuff, and that's the really unfortunate part.
It's one of the reasons I've never been married.
Is that one of the reasons?
Yeah,
Now,
I'm a little cynical
sure
about the
that?
whole institution because, you know, you see that happen. I saw that happen with my parents when they split up, you know.
So this happened, okay.
Oh,
so
absolutely, absolutely. And, yeah, you know, I don't understand how that happens, how 2 people can love each other so much and create a family, and then it turns into all this animosity. Not that it always goes that way. I mean, sometimes some divorces are friendly.
Yep.
But some are not, and it boggles my mind to watch that.
I think a lot of kids see that and they go, you know what, I'm not getting married.
Yeah,
I'm not getting married.
Exactly.
Look what happens when you get married. Why would I
Exactly.
want to get married? You know, they play nice for a while, and then the lawyers come in. And
Yep.
that's the unfortunate
Yeah,
part. So
yeah.
because the children really do suffer. So so basically, I also want to just say one more thing about the Guardian ad litem board. There is a budget cut for the board as of July 1st. Let me just find that. I've got so many papers here. Both parents, what they have done. This is from Edwin Kelly, the administrative judge. Because of the budget cuts, as you know, the governor has proposed the elimination of the Guardian ad litem fund, which pays GAL fees in the first instance for indigent parents in marital cases. This proposal has now passed the House. The impact of this proposal is that until we receive clearer direction from the legislator on the status of the Guardian ad litem fund, the family division must proceed cautiously. To be clear, I am not comfortable with eliminating this important resource for children of indigent parents. Nevertheless, the process outlined below is necessary in the short term. You know, and I guess I'm really having a hard time with the term indigent because a lot of times the indigent parents are not causing the chaos in the courts,
Right.
because they're the ones that really can't afford attorneys.
They can't
So-
afford to bring the chaos.
Right, they really can't. It's
Yeah.
really the people that have the money and have all these lawyers and are just beating each other up in court. We gotta go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to sign off, and you know what? Tune in next week. We are going to be talking welfare.
Excellent.
That's what we're going to talk about next
Okay.
week is welfare, and what goes along with that. And we will revisit the guardian ad litem issue. We will revisit this.
Oh, you're too late, caller.
Oh, you're too late. Okay. Oh, there they are. Have a good night.